Hello everyone, I'm Arbutus Washington and I am back to bring a close to the series of videos designed to disseminate my research and findings from my dissertation. Please see the initial video for an introduction of this series. Today I'd like to talk about the effects of constant employer rejection on the psychological well-being of the PII and additional factors that exacerbate those effects. Rejection is the refusal to accept a person or thing. Individuals are subjected to rejection throughout life, childhood, adulthood, adolescence, and systemic racism is defined as the injustices or biases or unfair treatment of a group of people due to the adoption of policies, laws, and regulations that ensure unfair practices in our institutions and nation as a whole. For instance, the banking institutions might have different lending practices for minorities. An article written by J. Fitzgerald for the Boston Globe on December the 21st in 2015 highlighted the discriminatory lending practices for blacks and Latinos that cause many rejections for loans. Hiring rejections and discrimination might occur across racial lines. Drew Harwell wrote an article for the Washington Post that highlighted unfair and deceptive hiring practices for a firm, and he wrote that in November the 6th, 2019. Many occurrences go unreported but continue to occur. In 1865, the black codes were enacted in Mississippi and South Carolina that required all blacks to sign work contracts and maintain employment as either farmers or servants. The blacks had to pay annual work taxes that created a further burden and inability to sustain. If the employment was not maintained, arrests were made, and some were forced to work on plantations. These codes restricted the labor opportunities and activities of free blacks that ensured rejections. Even though these laws were seemingly abolished, many blacks and other minorities suffer from the discriminatory practices that create scenarios for rejection on a daily basis. It is as if this society has developed a caste system by which one determines the status and opportunities available to a person simply by race in which they're born. So, what if an individual might have suffered rejections from family members or loved ones because of the choices they made, coupled with the societal rejection of daily life? The amounts And that amounts to a great deal of rejection that can affect a person's psychological well being. Now, imagine a life of rejection events, and then you are sentenced to prison and suffer rejection on the inside. One of my participants talked about the in prison caste system that separates the inmates into groups by inmate influencers or gang leaders. The inclusion into a group of prison gangs serves as protection on the inside. But without inclusion, the person is again rejected and becomes withdrawn or survives to find some form of acceptance with which to identify whether deviant or productive, or simply maintain through the process in that rejected state. Now, the inmate is released to another form of rejection, not only due to the color of the skin, but due to income level and a criminal record with a lack of support. So, because the constant exposure to rejection without the needed, renewed, or reconstructed mindset, the PII or previously incarcerated individual does not handle the idea of constant rejection well. All of the participants stated that they could tell when they were about to be rejected by something that the hiring manager would say or do. That's called ruminations. It's when one thinks deeply about something, or in that occurrence, that the remembrance of other occurrences of rejection as the PII sits and listens to the employer as they answer questions, but knowing and waiting on the rejection, because that scene is a mirror image of so many previous experiences of the PII, and it adds to the years of trauma from rejection that the PII seeks to offset by trying to find other ways to make a living rather than continuously subjecting themselves to the constant rejections that they perceive will continue to occur in interviews. You see, because of how the mind processes information, when one experience reminds the PII of a previous negative experience, then cognitive processing kicks in and produces the cognitive error in thinking that all occurrences of this kind will produce the same effect. So they feel that the solution is to look to different avenues to financially care for themselves and their families, other than continuing to go to interviews that they feel will end in rejection. And many of my participants talked about entrepreneurship ventures that they would rather go into than persistently be uh, in a position to be rejected. The question is, if they start a small business, will it be profitable enough initially to provide ample support, or will the need to avoid rejection in the return of the PII to the life that led to the initial incarceration or reoffending in other ways simply to maintain? The foregoing statement is the very reason why PIIs need assistance across the board. A person will do and go through a lot of things to keep from getting constantly hurt or traumatized. As one participant stated, it just takes all the wind out of you. And he was speaking of rejection. My ultimate solution to recidivism is this. When an inmate is released, the first person that they need to meet outside those gates is a caseworker, not probation or parole officer, but a caseworker. This person would have knowledge of the individual's case before release and be prepared to offer assistance through resources and support like transportation, housing, employment choices, mental and physical health assistance, and opportunities, and most of all, provide hope and support. If a caseworker met a PII immediately after release, the recidivism rate would drop to almost zero because, according to the PIIs that I spoke with, all they really want is a chance and opportunity to be productive citizens and the support and assistance to succeed. And because whether they have a criminal record or not, they're still citizens and they have paid their debts to society, if that debt was actually necessary in the first place. To explain, the reason that I never refer to previously incarcerated individuals as ex-offenders throughout this process is because many that are locked up today never offended in the first place. Some were set up, framed with planted evidence, or ran into a Karen and could not win against a system that was built on racism. Yeah, they were previously incarcerated, but because my judge and jury sits on the throne of grace, I'm not that, and I won't judge because I want to forego judgment for myself. And I don't have any clue as to whether they offended or not, but I do know that they were previously incarcerated. But by the grace of God, there goes I. And I'll end this series, but I'll continue to make videos on societal issues as the need presents. And if you would like to help or support PIs and my organization in providing assistance to PIs and others in need, please go to my website or donate or volunteer. My web address is helpfromthesanctuary.org, or you can donate directly through PayPal using the email address helpfromthesanctuary@yahoo.com. I will list those in the description. And you can follow me on Facebook by looking for Help from the Sanctuary Incorporated. And I hope you tune in for the next video. And please don't forget to like, comment, share, and please hit that subscribe button to get notification of newly updated videos and to create awareness of these issues. And I'd like to thank you for tuning in. And until next time, never forget to show concern and help one another.